Okay, for the next keynote speech, I'd like to invite Professor Bin Jalaluddin. Firstly, I'd like to introduce you. Professor Bill Jalaluddin is the University of Sydney alumni. He got a medical doctor, MPH and PhD, and currently he is a director for Population Health, Sydney Southwest Area Health Service, conjoint professor, School of Public Health and Community Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, University of New South Wales, honorary senior research fellow in air quality, Bulcock Institute of Medical Research, Royal Prince Alfred Hospital and University of Sydney, and stream leader, Population and Health Service stream, Ingham Institute for Applied Medical Research. Professor Jan?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for the conference organizers for inviting me. This is my second trip to Taiwan in the last 12 months, and I kind of really I enjoyed my first visit a lot, and I'm really enjoying my second visit too. So what I'm going to talk today is about healthy urban environments, and talking more about the global issues and going from the global to the country level to city level to the more local level. So I'm not going to be talking very much about the real detail about the exposome, as we had a very good explanation just now about the more detail, but I'll be talking at the larger level. So firstly, I'm just going to talk briefly about health and the environment. And I think this has been spoken about in the previous presentations, where we've talked about we cannot just look at one chemical at a time or one risk factor at a time, because health, the influences of the health on health are varied. So we have, for example, we have the people, and the people who live in an area, they have different ages. We have males and females, and there are different genetic factors. And then we have the lifestyle factors, the social environment, social capital, social connectedness. We have people where people work, they shop, they move around, where they live, they play. And so there's and the built environment factors, the natural environment, and so on, and the global factors. So all of these factors have an impact on health in many different ways. The pathways might be different. The factors may interact with each other, and therefore looking or trying to investigate, tease out the effects of individual factors can be very difficult. In terms of healthy urban environments and healthy cities, and I'll probably use these terms interchangeably, and urban environments, built environment, and neighborhoods. The World Health Organization started the Healthy Cities program in the late 1980s. And here's a series of dot points about what a healthy city should aim towards. And it's around clean, safe physical environment, an ecosystem that is stable now and sustainable in the long term, and so on and so forth. So there are about 10 different factors that the World Health Organization considered what a healthy city should be like. And in the early 90s, I was involved in one of those healthy cities in the western part of Sydney, was the Blacktown Healthy Cities. And the aim was to work with local government and other local agencies, profit and non-profit organizations, to create healthy environments. And so that's a few more of the various factors. And the last one, as you can see, is around having a high health status. And in more recent years, there's been a greater interest around healthy urban environments or the healthy built environments. And here we have the UN SDG goals, and there are 17 of these. Health is number 3, but what I'm more interested in this presentation is the SDG 11. And there are 7 targets for SDG 11, housing and basic services, sustainable transport, enhance inclusive and sustainable urbanization, and going right down to safe, inclusive, accessible, green and public spaces. So as you can see, to make cities or our urban environments healthy and sustainable, there are some targets here and there's some guidelines here. There's a new urban agenda, and so again, there's an increased interest around urban environments. The UNDP has a sustainable urbanization strategy. And one of the main drivers of why we want to think about making our urban environments and our cities healthy is because of this graph here. You can see the majority of the world's population lives in urban areas, and by 2050, about 60 to 70% of the world's population will be living in urban areas, urban cities. And I guess this is one thing we are trying to aim for. In the Lancet, there's an article recently on healthy cities in China, and as you can see from here, it talks about various areas where we can improve on to create healthy cities. And again, one of the drivers of this, as the article talks about, is very complicated, changing from one to the other. As urbanization accelerates around the world, and particularly in Asia, the role of cities to influence the health of the inhabitants has never been greater. And city life is associated with less healthy choices about exercise, diet, tobacco and alcohol, and increased risk for mental health. And each is essential to target if China is to reduce its burden of stroke, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and depression, and to combat obesity and diabetes. In Australia, about 30% of the burden of disease can be attributable to high body mass index, dietary factors, high blood sugar levels, and inadequate physical activity. And these factors are related to attributes of the built or the urban environment that are potentially modifiable. And I guess that's one of the reasons why there's more and more interest around the urban environment, around our neighborhoods. How can we change our neighborhoods? How can we have more control of the planning, how we plan our cities or our new suburbs? And there are two hypotheses on how neighborhoods affect health. The first one is a compositional effect. And who lives there? It's for the people who live in a neighborhood or who live in a city. So what are their characteristics? So these are the individuals who live in the neighborhoods, for example, the education level, the gender balance, the income level, the occupation, the behavioral risk factors. So it's about the people, the characteristics of the people. And that can influence, we know that can influence health. We know that poor neighborhoods have poorer health, they may have lower life expectancy, for example. The second is the contextual effect. This is, what does a neighborhood look like? What does the place they live look like? So is it a safe neighborhood? Is it an unsafe neighborhood? Is there a lot of green space? Or is there or is it a concrete jungle? Or is it a neighborhood that's crisscrossed by major roads? So where we live, our surroundings, that can also have an impact on our health. So our key questions And I've got 4 questions. I tried to cut it down to 3, but it didn't work very well. Our previous speakers yesterday had 3 dot points, and so I tried for that. But our key questions are, what are the main modifiable aspects of the urban environment that impact on health? What are the best ways to modify the urban environment to prevent disease, protect and promote health? What tools can be used by state governments, national government, local governments and industry to plan and sustain healthy built environments? And how can we best translate research outcomes into policy and practice in this particular area? And I've just got 3 examples that which I'll talk about. This is a very busy slide, but I'm just going to show you there was a series of articles in The Lancet towards the end of 2016, which talked about urban design, transport and health. So the first of the articles was City Planning and Population Health, a Global Challenge. And what they talk about is some of the factors here in the urban environment. And what are the factors here that the attributes of the urban environment that may contribute to health? But now this is mainly transport related. So they talk about in the local area, the local urban design is for the design of the environment, can't read it from here, but density, diversity, the desirability, and so on. So it's about the 5 Ds at the local level. And I'll go to the next one. But this is just to highlight what the thinking is around the urban environment. And here, in the second paper, they're talking about land use, transport and population health, and estimating the health benefits of compact cities. Here we are trying to avoid this issue around urban sprawl. And the thinking now is that we should have compact cities, medium density housing, or medium to high density housing rather than low density housing. In Sydney, we have a lot of low density housing. Our city goes of 5 million people, but you can drive from east to west for 50 kilometers and north-south for 50 kilometers. So we have an urban sprawl, and I'm sure there are many other cities in the world which are very sprawling cities. So the thinking now is around compact cities. And so a compact city encourages cycling and walking. A compact city approach also results in reduced city-specific particulate air pollution, because we hope there'll be less need to use cars, and people will be cycling and walking much more. And we hope to have policies that will incentivize walking, cycling and public transport while reducing subsidies for private motor vehicle use, or making it much more difficult or more expensive to use your cars. And in the third paper, they talk about the use of science to guide city planning policy and practice, and how to achieve healthy and sustainable future cities. And it's all very straightforward. You have policy-relevant research question, policy-relevant research methods, dissemination strategy to decision makers, engagement in advocacy. Now, I think you've already heard from quite a number of speakers that it is not so easy in real life. But so in this paper, there are also a range of strategies of how we can translate our science into policy and into practice. The second example which I'm going to talk about is something which I was involved with the with the faculty of the built environment at the University of New South Wales. So I was the health partner, and we partnered with the faculty of built environment, and we reviewed the literature at this stage around healthy built environments. And this was 6-7 years ago. And we came up with 3 domains. We thought we should look at the built environment and getting people active, the built environment and connecting and strengthening local communities, the built environment and providing healthy food options. Because we thought these 3 areas would then have an impact on 3 of the major risk factors for NCDs. Physical inactivity, social isolation, and overweight obesity. And so one of the key messages we thought is there is a strong relationship between people's health and the built environment, and that this relationship is complex and contextual. So it depends where you are. Something in one city may not work somewhere else. And within each of the 3 domains, we thought it would lead to there be certain other built environment indicators that we could influence and behaviors that we could influence. So, for example, in terms of the nutrition and providing healthy food options, we thought the built environment or the urban environment could facilitate access to healthy foods. It could also promote responsible food advertising. And I think one of the previous speakers yesterday talked about advertising. And I think that's very, very important. So we did the review, and we were hoping that the information we had in a fairly easy-to-read document would be taken up by both the health sector and also the non-health sector. The third example which I'm going to talk about, where we've tried to look at what are the attributes of the built environment or the urban environment that may impact on health. And here I'm going to talk about very briefly a report, some work done by Billy Giles Corti, who's done a lot of work in this area, and those who were at the ISEE in Sydney last year would remember that she was one of the keynote speakers. And she now works in Melbourne, and she and her team have come up with these 7 indicated cities that can contribute to creating livable communities. And they've listed the 7 of them are walkability, use of public transport, public open spaces, housing affordability, employment, food environments, and alcohol environments. So as you can see from those 3 examples, some of those built environment attributes are fairly similar. So, so we seem to think that if we can improve walkability, we can improve public transport, reducing car use, having more green space, open spaces to improve social capital, social connectedness, and so on, we can improve health. And we often do need to have some sort of overarching framework to try to work out how do these factors work to improve health. And very fortunately, there's a paper in 2016 from Mark Neuenhausen from Barcelona, who had in his paper this diagram, which looked at the pathways for how perhaps we think this, the attributes of the urban environment might impact on health. And here he's mainly talking about urban and transport planning, environmental exposures, and health. And so we have urban design. So we have how urban design factors, mixed land use, connectivity, the density, transport infrastructure, again, walkability, green space, and how can it then impact on behavior, and then the pathways to mobility and to mortality. So we are trying to bring it together in some sort of coherent fashion that makes sense to us and also makes sense to when we're trying to explain how factors or attributes of the urban environment can impact on health. And this is something which I came across when I was doing my research for this talk. And in China, there's going to be, they're building a forest city, which is supposed to be ready by 2020. And I'm not sure whether any of the Chinese colleagues are here, but and if you are, I'd like you to hold the next ISEE conference in China so I can visit and to visit the forest city. Okay, the next few slides, I'm just going to focus on two of the factors that have come up over and over again in the three examples which I gave you. One is around physical activity. So insufficient physical activity or inadequate physical activity is a key risk factor for non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular disease, cancer and diabetes, and also, importantly, mental health. So shifting or moving away from motorized transport to active transport provides substantial net benefits. And here, we've done some work around the impact of urban sprawl on overweight obesity, and we found that living in more sprawling suburbs increases the risk of overweight obesity and of inadequate physical activity. Does urban sprawl impact on self-rated health and psychological distress? And we kind of didn't really find very much there. We've also been doing some work around walkability, and a lot of this is from one of our PhD students, and so things like does walkability contribute to geographic variation in psychological distress? Does area level walkability are there variations in area level walkability and so on? And I've got another 5 minutes, so I will go through this very quickly. A published study from the UK when they modeled 3 different scenarios where they had the baseline scenario, scenario 1, scenario 2 and 3, going from a lot of cars to fewer cars to only public transport to no cars at all and mainly cycling and walking. And the benefits of the model, this is all done through some modeling, and there were benefits to be seen, and most of the benefits were due to increased walking and cycling. Must skip. And we also looked at, we did some work with a systematic review of looking at papers that have been published of where they've looked at people who've moved from less walkable areas and who've moved to a more walkable area, and whether people actually then walked more. The evidence was a bit mixed and was not very clear, but it seemed to suggest that relocating to more supportive residential environments increased walking. And the other factor is around green space. Green space impacts on health and well-being through a number of pathways, has a restorative function, provides opportunities of physical activity and facilitates social connections, and it promotes better mental well-being, lowers the risk of obesity in childhood, and we have lower stress levels and lower weight and better health outcomes. And we've done a bit of work around this, but Dr. Bird and Dr. Feng, who in the audience here, they've done much more work around green space. And that's what I like about car parks. I think that's what car parks should be. And now down to the more local level. And what we've done here, some of the work we did, we developed a healthy urban development checklist, because it's for the use by local councils and by people who work in health, who have to review plans. And because there was a dearth of information or easy to use information, so we developed a healthy urban checklist. And the indicators that we focused on was healthy foods, physical activity, housing, transport and physical connectivity, employment, safety, public open space, social infrastructure, social cohesion, social connectivity, environment and health, and the big questions like, are there likely to be significant issues related to encouragement of incidental physical activity and so on. So under each of these domains, there were a series of questions they could just tick off. So hopefully it made it easier to use for local councils when they are reviewing housing development plans or infrastructure plans. And in the same way, in Perth, there's a healthy, active by design checklist, and again, they had nearly similar kinds of indicators there. And I will just quickly now skip through the last few slides. And so what's the future of the urban environments? And now I think the future might be around smart cities. And everything these days is around smart or around E. And so cities are now going towards E-cities and smart cities. And this is from the Asian Development Bank from 2012. And they talk about, no longer about we need more green space or we need more walkable spaces, but it's all about smart living, smart economy, smart energy, smart mobility, smart environment, smart people, and smart governance. So we're really moving in that direction. So we're getting smarter. And even the Australian government has a smart cities plan. And again, the domains are very similar to what I've just showed you. And finally, I'm involved in a research proposal that we'll be submitting next month around future cities. It's a cooperative research center, and we are inviting industry and government agencies to be part of our CRC, and they will contribute funding up to about $100 million. And we will do, what we hope to do is policy relevant research, what industries need and what governments need. And hopefully when I'm speaking to you in 2 years' time or a year's time or at some future stage, I will let you know whether we were successful. And I'll end here. So thank you very much.